Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us on our weekly media briefing and public health update with Montgomery County Executive Mark Elridge. I'm Lorna Virgili, Hispanic Public Information Officer, and joining us today are Mr. Sean O'Donnell, Assistant Chief of Public Health Services, Dr. Earl Strader, who is Assistant Chief Administrative Officer, and our special guest this afternoon is the county's Chief Administrative Officer, Rich Matalino. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Mr. County Executive, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and thank everybody for joining us again. Yesterday, I transmitted some amendments to both my operating and capital budgets to the council. On the operating side, I proposed adjustments that strengthen a couple of our important community investments and reflect developments coming out of legislative session, including support for pre-kindergarten implementation, the George B. Thomas Learning Academy, CASA's Rapid Response Hotline, the American Diversity Group clinic support, and support for the Back Rock Center of the Arts, as well as some additional climate investments. On the capital side, I was able to transfer amendments that create more than $22 million in additional capacity for county projects. I'm really grateful to Montgomery County's state delegation and the Moore Miller administration for helping make this possible. Because of our partnership with the state, we're advancing additional school construction resources, transportation, and pedestrian safety improvements, as well as investments in public safety facilities, parks, cultural facilities, and other infrastructure our residents depend on. This all means significant additional support for many school facilities, a new 4th District Police Station, new Olney Satellite Police Station, improved North Bethesda Metro access, and the Glenico Spanish Ballroom renovation, among other things. On a separate budget topic, I want to say a few things about the Council President's budget counter proposal that was announced on Friday. My recommended budget was built on a set of principles, and I think it's important to be clear about that. The first is that when we make commitments to our employees, we keep them. The compensation agreements in this budget were negotiated in good faith. Those agreements matter not only because they affect paychecks, but because they reflect whether our word means something. At a time when government workers, nonprofit workers, and public servants are already under attack daily from Trump and his allies, I'm not going to come in with a budget that turns around and tells the people who keep this county running that we're walking away from our commitments to them. However, the council retains the authority to modify salary increases. I'd be concerned if they were to disregard our agreed commitments, as it's important that we honor what we promised our employees, and our increases were pretty much in line with inflation. Second, I recommend fully funding the MCPS budget request because our schools have real needs and because we've spent years trying to recover from decisions made during the recession and after the Great Recession. As you can see from this chart, after the Great Recession, that gray bar there, county spending went down. County and state spending went down. And the effect of that was that the county fell behind in its per pupil spending. And that is a real problem and has been a real problem for over a decade. We are finally back up to where we were in 2010. That's a long time getting back to 2010. And even with that, this is a more difficult school system to teach in than it was in 2010. This budget finally brings per pupil spending back in line with where we were before 2010. I don't think that continuing to shortchange MCPS is a responsible long-term strategy. When schools fall behind, the costs do not disappear, and they show up somewhere else later. I think it's really naive when people get angry. Obviously, the school systems had issues with how students are performing. But to focus on the schools and punish the schools by thinking, well, if they're not getting higher scores, we should take away money is a fool's errand. I can guarantee you that taking away money, increasing class size, and all the other things that would be the result of taking away money will not do anything to raise student scores. This is like the saying, the beatings will continue till morale improves. Morale doesn't usually improve when you're beating people. Third, this budget right-sizes the gap between what we know we need to spend and the revenues we actually have to support those obligations. That part is sometimes what people want to skip over. We have rising costs. Some of those costs are outside our control. Some of them come from inflation. Some come from increased need. Some come from the uncertainty and damage coming from Trump and his allies. And some come from choices we've made here locally. We've also seen the council approve policies over time that reduce revenues or increase costs while still expecting the government to absorb the impact. And they've been doing this over the last couple of years. Somehow the council has no problem providing tax cuts to developers, in some cases 15 to 20 years of no property taxes, while saying we don't have the resources to fund our needs. Some of those decisions are large, like the tax incentives and payment in lieu of tax agreements. Some are smaller bills that may sound manageable on their own, but they add enforcement costs, administrative burdens, or legal exposure without any dedicated funding to support that. All that adds up. You cannot keep narrowing revenues, adding obligations, and then act surprised when the budget gets harder to balance. This revenue problem is why I've advocated for being able to tax residential and commercial properties at different rates. And to be clear, commercial property taxes would be the higher rate, something the Maryland Association of Counties, with more Republican counties than Democratic counties in there, has also supported in the General Assembly for the last several sessions. But somehow it does not pass. Part of that somehow is that our county council has refused to support the legislation. One of its members actually lobbied against the legislation. And what's really infuriating is that the council is only enabled to create legislation. This bill doesn't even tell them what they have to pass. It just gives them the ability to pass something. It didn't dictate what the tax structure would be. In other words, the council is ensured that it would not get in front of them to discuss, and I can tell you why. If the state gave us the power to do this, residents are going to start asking the council, why aren't you doing it? Now that you can. DC does it. The Northern Virginia counties that are investing in transportation and eating our lunch do it. So why won't this council do it? Residents in Montgomery County bear a disproportionate burden of taxes. We would be replacing some of the tax dollars our residents contribute with taxes on the commercial sector, and we'd still keep our commercial rates below the higher rates in Virginia. This is a pretty simple math problem. More commercial revenue means less taxes on residents. I would have made very different choices had this been available to us. I've also advocated in advance of this budget to raising our bonding cap limit to increase funds for capital and infrastructure projects. I was told by council leadership they would not address that in this budget process. This is the example of the growth districts that we're proposing. When I presented this in my recommended capital budget last month, we also put it forward our plan for growth districts, which would help create more funding toward our infrastructure backlog, especially for BRT. I was also instructed this proposal would not be addressed in the budget deliberations. But now, and amazingly so, since apparently we can't discuss anything that changes the structure, now the council president can make a proposal that completely changes our taxing structure while also eliminating the income tax offset credit, our largest property tax credit for all homeowners in Montgomery County, and the Working Families Income Supplement. These are two critical and popular tax programs that many residents count on. And this was done with only 3 weeks left until the straw vote on this budget. Elimination of the Working Families Income Supplement, which is the name Montgomery County uses for a 60% match of the state's refundable earned income tax credit, could be devastating to families with children. The impact of the WFIS is tied directly to family size rather than income alone, as is the council president's proposal. Because the state credit and thus the county match increases with the number of qualifying children, families with 2 or 3 children would bear the brunt of their tax bill. The data above we're including is information presented to the planning board this week. And it shows that households headed by single women with children are at a greater economic disadvantage, with a median annual income of $56,475. That means half the people earn less than that, and higher rates of poverty and food assistance participation. The graph we're sharing shows that while the county's overall poverty rate was about 8% in 2024, 1 out of every 4, or 25% of female-led households with children, are in poverty. The tax credits are now in jeopardy that protect these families and many more. A recent report by the Maryland Comptroller found that child tax credits combined with the EITC are among the most effective tools the government has to increase economic mobility for low-income Marylanders. They're refundable tax credits that reduce the amount owed or increase refunds for eligible residents. Homeowners also stand to lose with the counterproposal. Eliminating the homeowner tax credit, known as the ITOC, would result in most homeowners paying more property taxes than they would under my proposal. To explain, the ITOC is a flat $692 credit against property taxes for every homeowner who claims their home as their principal residence. That includes condos. For anyone whose home is valued at under $1,090,000, their property taxes would actually be higher under her proposal than mine. The bill for a $500,000 home would rise by $315 under my plan, but by $692 under the council president's plan. Under their plan, a parent with 2 children earning $50,000 might see a $350 cut in the income taxes, but they would lose $1,879 in benefits from the working family's income supplement. At the end of the day, that family ends up with about $1,500 less in their pocket. These are the people in this county who are the very least likely to be able to manage with $1,500 less. That's why I think it's important for people to look beyond the campaign slogans about tax relief and ask a basic question. What's being reduced? What's being shifted? And who ultimately pays for it? My budget was designed to protect core services, honor our commitments, fully support our schools, and do it in a way that recognizes the pressures we're now facing. I think that's more than an honest approach. I also would add one more thing. This is not happening in a vacuum. We're dealing with growing instability from the Trump administration, cuts, threats, uncertainty, and real economic harm to workers, nonprofits, businesses, and families here in Montgomery County. This is exactly the moment when local government has to hold the line, not retreat. We're doing exactly what Donald Trump would like us to do. We should not let what's happening in the White House force us to weaken the very things that people rely on most. I remain guided by the same principles that shaped my recommendations from the start. Keep our promises, protect our schools, preserve the services people count on, and be honest about what it takes to pay for them. I've invited our CAO, Rich Madalena, to help provide more context on what the council president's counterproposal means for our residents and taxpayers. So, Rich, thank you for joining me.
Thank you very much, Mr. County Executive. I know you've hit all the high points. Just to reiterate, there are so many puts and takes with the proposal that the council president put out there that, for many people, it will actually result in a higher tax bill or a loss of supports. The Working Families Income Supplement, which is part of our Earned Income Tax Credit program, is part of what has been seen for years, decades in this country, the most valuable and successful anti-poverty program that the nation has launched. And if you're a family of 2 getting the maximum WFIS supplement, you're talking about a little more than $1,800 a year. So you could be losing, gaining $100 in less income tax and a smaller income tax bill, but losing $1,800 in additional support that goes right into feeding your family, clothing your family, helping to pay the rent. So, it is for certainly single parent households with multiple children, this would be a devastating loss of income, money right out of their pockets, right at the worst possible time. So I suggest we get to questions about these issues with the reporters right now before you get on to other topics.
Okay.
Thank you, Madaleno. I see Ms. Hackleby from Bethesda today. You had your camera on. Go ahead, and then Tom Fitzgerald.
Hi. So when we're talking about this tax credit that's being eliminated, specifically the credit against the property tax bill, I'm just wondering if you can speak to how renters factor into this. Obviously, it's a tax credit that's just for people who live in the homes that they own. So if you could just speak to that briefly.
Mark, if you want to do it, or so
Go ahead.
you're Shayla, you're absolutely right. it is a tax credit that only goes to the people who live in their owner-occupied residence. So you only get that credit if you're living in the home, the single-family home, townhouse, apartment you own. So renters don't benefit from the ITOC. On the other hand, because of the economic profile of our community, far more renters are lower income and could stand to benefit from the Working Families Income Supplement. So if you are a person who, let's say over the last year, due to the DOGE cuts and Trump's attack on the federal government, let's say you lost your job and your income fell dramatically. You have a house, and now you're getting the credit. That the double whammy of that elimination of the credit and the elimination of the Working Families Income Supplement, which you might be eligible for the first time, could be a loss of in excess of $1,000 in increased taxes and reduced support.
Thank you.
Thank you. Tom Fitzgerald, Fox 5 DC. Go ahead, Tom.
Thank you for doing the call today. Listening to what you laid out here, County Executive, and we listened to what the council president laid out on Friday. It seems that the residents are facing a tax hike either way, whether it will be through property taxes under your proposal or it would be through income taxes under her proposal. Do voters need to resign themselves to the fact that this is coming no matter what? A couple of years ago, when Evan Glass was council president, I know you went back and forth with the council at that time, and then the taxes were able to be avoided. Is this a fait accompli right now? Will there be no avoidance of this?
Look, I'll say the one thing that Natalie thought she was addressing, but we think she's wrong on her numbers, is that, they're trying to avoid having to make all the cuts that they're going to have to make. The cuts are serious. There is no, if you know anything about the county government, this is not a place with a lot of luxury programs sitting around. When I put my budget together, the only enhancements were things where, for example, the community clinics, which provide healthcare in the community, they're looking at the federal governments and what they've done to health insurance. So they're anticipating like more than 6,000 new potential patients that'll be in our clinics. I don't have the money to keep the clinics supported with an additional 6,000 people. So same thing's true with the tax on housing. The president doesn't support permanent support of housing. If those pillars come out, then that's on us again. And so we tried to, we put money in where we knew we were going to see additional need. We actually made over, I think, $20 million in cuts to our budget, where we, and I told my staff, if you can cut stuff that doesn't hurt a person, give me those cuts. And we made $20 million of cuts. But I honestly stayed away from things where I knew that the impact of a cut would have an impact on families in Montgomery County. So, and we were kind of conscious of that. And I'll just say, which I tried to emphasize in here, the council's had the option for a couple of years to support a legislation in Annapolis that would have given them the authority to create taxing districts, just like Virginia. And you've heard me say this before, and it's true in DC. DC's had, they're like the poster child. Their residents have the lowest taxes of anybody in the region. Do you live in DC or do you live out here? If you live in DC, you'd pay 85 cents on your property tax. If you're commercial property in DC, you pay $1.89. You pay $1.03 in Montgomery County. So in places like DC and Virginia, they use higher taxes on commercial property to support their budget. Our budget, our taxes are so much lower than Virginia's. The base tax for commercial property and base tax is $1.26 in Fairfax and $1.03 at 23 cents. If I had 23 cents In Montgomery County, that would yield about $160 million of revenue, which I would then take off the residential side. So the council's had another alternative. They've just made sure it never came in front of them to vote on.
And can I just follow up briefly? My understanding is that there is no widespread support for the council president's position right now amongst the council. So where did this come from? I mean, did she consult with you about all of this, or
No,
was this out of left field, or were you
It's out of
caught
left
by?
field. She never met with, she could have met with the budget staff and said, if I do this, what's the impact? She might have gotten better answers than she came up with herself. And she hasn't talked to me. She's expressed reservation. She said she wants to fund the school budget. I mean, it's great to want to do things, but at some point you got to decide you're going to do it or not. And what happens if you don't do it? I mean, the only outcome isn't simply that residents have lower taxes. Things will happen that change what happens in the community, and that's an impact too. So you only want to talk about the tax side of it. Tell people what the other stuff is. I'll tell you what she's going to do, because she's already laid this out. They're voting all this stuff in committee. Have you watched any of these committee meetings? All these things are passed on unanimous votes, right? After they pass it all on unanimous votes, she's having a private meeting. And the council members aren't allowed to be in the meeting, but their staff's allowed to be in the meeting. And they will vote on what goes into the final budget in secret. You will not see the council members' hands on it. And they will not tell you who voted for what cuts. So they're going to publicly vote for everything. They've done a good job of doing that so far. They actually doubled one of the things I had in there. Good luck with that. I like the sentiment. I would have doubled it too if I had the money. But they're going to vote on all that and say, this is what we support. Look at our hands. And then secretly, they're going to vote to kill it. That's what I can't stand. If they want to kill it, do it. Go into council session, bring up the items on the reconciliation, and have an up and down public vote so people know where you stand. So when you say, I'm with you on taxes, they also know what you took out in order to do that. That's what they should do. Not this, hiding in the closet. Everybody knows what I put in my budget. And every nonprofit knows that who didn't put it in there. If I didn't put it in there, they know Mark didn't put everything I asked for in there. These guys are going to tell the nonprofits we're supporting everything, and you're never going to know who voted for it. They shouldn't be allowed to do it. And frankly, I can't believe that they're allowed to have their staff who can be consulting with the council member actually do these votes. It's amazing.
So
Thank you.
Tom,
Yeah, go ahead.
in addition to the answer to your question, and I'm happy to explain this to the other journalists who are on the call. So I think it is important to remember that one of the reasons we are in the financial situation we are in is because of the substantial cuts to the federal government that has impacted the number of jobs across the region, the number of people employed in our county and across the entire region. I'm sure you saw the numbers yesterday that the Washington region had the largest drop, statistically the most significant drop in the country over the last, from January of this year to January of last year. So part of that significant cut in jobs was driven out of the Trump administration's desire and the Republican allies in Congress to dramatically cut taxes on especially the wealthiest and most fortunate people in our community. So, last week, the county executive put out numbers, and we'll be happy to share this graph with you from the Congressional Budget Office, using numbers from the Congressional Budget Office. A family with 2 working adults with a gross income of $500,000, we're a wonderful community. We have many people who fit into that situation. We're very fortunate. I get it. And a home value of $1.25 million. Again, you know what it costs to live in this community, what our housing values are. So there are plenty of families across our county who fit in that description. They will see by the Congressional Budget Office's numbers a minimum tax decrease of $9,600, $9,600. Many will receive a reduction in taxes exceeding $10,000. what the county executive is saying, so many other people in support in the community are saying, with these substantial cuts in your federal taxes, we're asking for a small piece. Again, that same family under the county executive's plan would see a $954 increase in their taxes. So roughly 10% of their federal tax cut coming to support police and fire, public schools, healthcare, addressing the needs of people who have been hurt in our community. I think, and I assume the county executive would agree, that's not a bad deal for us to keep our promises in Montgomery County. You know, if no one asked a 5-year-old whether or not they wanted to be born in a post-Doge world, but they're going to be walking into kindergarten the very first time. Did they pay a price for this for their lifetime because we were unable to provide services to them? County executive has been passionate about this. You know, he's a former educator. You know, he's a former math teacher, so he's passionate about math too. But he's been clear about this. The superintendent and the school board were very clear about this and the need for the additional investment, whether it's reducing class sizes, increasing special ed, actually saving money by having the right special ed staff in the schools, so we're not having to experience more money of getting kids placed in non-public settings that are far more expensive because we can deliver the services in the schools. So, you know, this is a reasonable suggestion for revenue enhancements, and you got to pair it with these extreme reductions, especially for the most fortunate people in our community and around the country, out of the federal tax cuts. And a reminder that because at least our Democratic representatives in Congress, whether it's Senator Van Hollen, Senator Alsobrooks, Congressman Raskin, Congresswoman Delaney, you know, that they fought for that increase in the SALT deduction. And in many ways, people who have to pay higher state taxes, state and local taxes, will have that opportunity to get some of that deducted in their federal taxes next year, potentially all of it, depending upon where you are with the amount of taxes you owe. That's what SALT, when people talk about the SALT deduction, it's state and local tax deduction. So you gotta, I know you framed it with the, should you be resigned to a tax increase? You gotta look at it holistically. How much you're paying in taxes, and due to these extreme and regressive tax cuts at the federal level, you're going to be walking away when combined with money in your pocket and a huge debt to your children and grandchildren and great grandchildren at the way we're going. But at least for this year, I think it's important to note that math. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. I see your hand back up.
Chile is back. Chile is back.
Yeah, so this is not about the council president's budget proposal, but I just, while we're on the subject of budget proposals that are not the county executives, I wanted to ask Mr. Elrich, have you seen the proposal that was put forward on Friday by Councilmember Jawando? And if so, do you have any sort of thoughts on it? I know it was a little bit less fleshed out than what we saw from the council president, but I'm just curious about the general idea there.
You're on mute for some reason.
Yeah, we cannot hear you, Mr. County Executive. We still do not hear you. Can we get some assistance to him?
It's weird that you're not muted. It's not showing you muted. So you hit something. You potentially hit something.
Now.
There, better. Yeah.
That was a great answer, Mark. Print that, Chili. But he just said.
How did it switch microphones on me? This is a mystery. Okay, so I got my microphone back. Okay, where were you in your question? You asked me about Will's proposal. So what I was going to say is, look, we got these reserves. The whole point of reserves is you got this money there in case you hit an unexpected speed bump. And I'd say for the first time since I was elected, we hit an unplanned speed bump. And just to give you background, before I was elected, the county had a 10% reserve target. We had never hit a 10% reserve target. I think since my third year, we didn't do it the first year because I had to make $80 million cuts in the middle of the year. But by the third year, we hit our reserve target every year. We hit our reserve target again this year. We have exceeded it. I think we've exceeded every year. We've been as high as 17% reserves. And we've been very careful not to spend all the money out, so we got nothing left. So over the years, we've been able to use reserves to plug holes. Frankly, we would have been better if we had raised the taxes a couple of times, and I suggested, and mounted up even more reserves rather than spending reserves to balance the budget instead of counting on taxes to balance budget. That's a whole other issue, though. But Will's basically saying you've got these reserves, you've hit a bump. This isn't a permanent condition, hopefully. And the county does have 3 years to restore whatever it cuts out of reserve. So you could go under the reserves, and then you've got 3 years to restore funding to the reserve level. I get it. It's consistent with the philosophy of what reserves are used for. It is not the worst recommendation in the world because it preserves things that are important. I just think there are ways to get there without doing it. And I would rather do that. I'd rather, because we don't know what's going to happen with Trump over the next year. We don't know what this next Congress is going to look like. We don't know whether next year will be better for us than worse. And I think, Rich, you've made this point about the state. The state's going to be hitting even stronger headwinds next year. So we may wind up seeing less money coming from the state rather than more coming from the state. So if I have an option of not putting ourselves more in jeopardy for what could happen next year, I'd probably pick the path we're on. But I get the path that he chose, and at least it's legitimate and honest.
If I can just follow up quickly, he's obviously also proposed this sort of different income tax breakdown compared to your proposal, where he would have the income tax rate increased to 3.3% for only people making $500,000 or more. That only gets you, I think, enough money, he said, to fund an increase to the nonprofit contract adjustment. Where do you foresee the rest of this money coming from?
Well, I think he foresees it coming from reserves in balance. And that's why I didn't. Trust me, I thought about what I could do to make this more progressive. That's why we put the we increased the working family supplement so that we could offset some of the taxes we knew we were proposing on the people at the bottom of the income ladder. I made a decision that I could live with some increase on this lower income group because it's not all that much money. If you had $200,000 in, well, that's taxable income. Say you had $100,000 in taxable income, your income is probably closer to 130 if you are owning property. So maybe it costs you $100. I figured that's not a backbreaker compared to some of the other stuff. So I was trying to balance fairness where I knew I need to have it, focusing on as broad amount of money I could raise off the income taxes because it's certainly more progressive than real estate taxes, which take no account of your income. So it was a balancing act. But at least I can tell you what I balanced and why I balanced it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Members of the media, any additional questions this afternoon regarding the fiscal year 2027 operating budget? Please raise your hands.
So,
No
Shaylee,
questions?
just one little background information, because you asked the question before about the ITOC. Just to give you a little more information, we estimate that there are more than 201,000 property tax accounts that get the ITOC. So that is, when you think about the number of households across the county, that is a lot of people who benefit from.
Can you say that one more time? You said 21,000?
No.
201,000.
201,000. Okay, thank you.
if you want, we estimate it's 201,897, but it could be 898, but that's close, you know.
Rich, why didn't you round to 202?
I know. I'm sorry. I try to be conservative. I know Tom Fitzgerald is on the call. No. Oh, he dropped off. So
Okay. Thank you. If we don't have any more questions regarding the budget, Mr. County Executive, then we can transition to other topics.
Now for the fun, less controversial stuff. So Montgomery County launched a new version of our website, montgomerycountymd.gov. Over the past year, our community visited the county website more than 8 million times, making it one of our most widely used public services. More than half those visits came from mobile devices. That's why improving the online experience has been one of our top priorities. The redesigned site is built to help you find information faster, complete tasks more easily, and connect with county services wherever you are. We started our redesign after gathering feedback from more than 5,700 residents, businesses, and visitors. Many shared that finding information across departments could be challenging. We listened and we designed the new site to directly address those needs. Some of the key improvements include a more powerful search tool to help you locate services and information, a modern and unified design across all departments, a mobile-friendly experience that works seamlessly on phones and tablets, enhanced accessibility that meets accessibility standards and multilingual support, and stronger security, improved performance, and longer-term sustainability powered by the Citizen Forward platform. This is the county's most significant website update since 2016. It reflects our ongoing commitment to delivering high-end quality digital services and ensuring our online platforms remain reliable, accessible, and forward-thinking. There's going to be some glitches and bumps along the way, and we will be updating the content as we move forward and as people notify us of problems. I've already notified them of a couple of things I noticed, and we expect the site to undergo continual reform until every bump that's been that could be found has been found, and then we'll fix the bumps and smooth it out. So I'm confident we'll get this completely right, but it's a major improvement for where it is right now. So be patient. If you have any questions or have a difficult time finding information, you can help us. You can get information by calling 311. Our website redesign team is addressing and resolving any of the concerns from the transition to the new site. So stay tuned. We got an update this week from the Montgomery County Department of Police about arrests tied to a car rally that made headlines in February. You may remember this rally because participants smashed up 2 police cars as officers were trying to respond. Detectives have arrested 3 suspects connected to that large street takeover that happened early on Sunday morning on February 22nd at East West Highway and Connecticut Avenue. The event began in Prince George's County before moving to downtown Silver Spring. Not only were streets blocked, but drivers performed dangerous stunts and surrounded the officers who responded. One officer was seated inside the police car that was damaged. Fortunately, no officers or community members were injured. One suspect was from Laurel, and 2 others were not from our area. I want to encourage families to discourage participation in this kind of behavior. In addition to being illegal, it's also highly dangerous. Anytime a car is driven out of control, the driver has no idea where it could end up. Anyone standing nearby is at risk of serious injury from the car and the movement of people trying to get out of the way. This could wind up going south really quickly. Our police department has done a great job of limiting these events and other large gatherings by keeping close eye on social media and anticipating takeovers. But things can change quickly, and we can't monitor all communications. Investigators will continue to pursue the instigators of the events to prevent them from impacting our community. We continue to ask our residents to please make MCPD aware when they see either in person or online that these reckless gatherings are current or are being planned in their communities. So if you see something about this, please let us know. Today is Earth Day, so happy Earth Day, everyone. Earth Day started April 22nd, 1970, and has become the largest secular protest in the world. The first Earth Day achieved rare political alignment. back in the old days when things were possible, enlisting support from Republicans and Democrats, rich and poor, urban dwellers, farmers, and business and labor leaders. By the end of 1970, the first Earth Day led to the creation of the United States Environmental Protection Agency by none other than Richard Nixon, of all people, and the passage of the first of their kind environmental laws, including the National Environmental Education Act, the Occupational Safety and Health Act, and the Clean Air Act. And 2 years later, Congress passed the Clean Water Act. All these things Trump is attempting to destroy. Earth Day has evolved into an entire month of April, being known as Earth Month, which our county honors and celebrates throughout the entire month. Our signature event is Greenfest, which will be occurring this weekend in Germantown. Greenfest is on Saturday from 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. at Black Rock Center for the Arts. It's an opportunity to learn and take action together at one of my favorite events of the year. I like the way it connects people with valuable resources, including volunteer opportunities, sustainability programs, and rebate incentives for home electrification. Additionally, this month, our Department of Environmental Protection has encouraged residents to keep it clean. Keep It Clean Montgomery is a public awareness campaign focused on keeping litter out of the streets and streams. Litter moves through our storm drains, into our streams and rivers, and ultimately into the Chesapeake Bay. At a time when we're seeing efforts to weaken environmental protections at the federal level, it's even more important that we take responsibility for what happens in our own communities. This campaign is about reminding people that everyday actions have real consequences. So let's avoid littering, pick up where we can, and call 311 when we see areas where trash is piling up. I'm also excited to share news about a fourth location for the public drop-off of food scraps. The weekend farmers market at Pike and Rose is the latest opportunity to dispose of your collected food scraps and not add to more than 58,000 tons of yearly waste that come from unused food. Residents can bring their food scraps to farm markets happening in Bethesda, Almy, Silver Spring, and starting May 2nd, the farmers market will be open in Durwood, and the county will be collecting scraps there as well. More information can be found on the Department of Environmental Protection's page under Recycling Food Scraps. Several weeks ago, I introduced the 250 Actions Challenge initiative by the Latino Health Initiative, which encourages sustainable living practices in recognition of the county's 250th anniversary. Attendees at Greenfest this weekend will have the opportunity to learn more about strategies for enhancing sustainability in their homes and workplaces, as well as their communities. So before we open it up to questions, I'll give my staff an opportunity to provide any updates they want to share. And as always, we'll start with our health team.
Thank you, Mr. County Executive. The public health team does not have any updates at this time. I'll turn it over to Dr. Stoddard.
No updates this week. I think we can go ahead and take any other questions there.
Thank you, gentlemen. Members of the media, any additional questions this afternoon for the county executive and the government team? Any questions? There you go again, Shirley. Go ahead.
Sorry, I'm monopolizing our time this afternoon. I just wanted to briefly. What'd you say?
We bill by the hour.
Oh, okay, cool. So as far as the website launch, I was just wondering, do you have any idea of like roughly how many issues that have been resolved and how many are still sort of pending?
God, I don't know that technical question.
Well, that's a great question, and I'll ask the team if they have any numbers that way to try to explain. I mean, one of the things that we're finding, that is not necessarily an issue, but because the where we host the website moved. So while the website, the words that you type in are the same, the address actually underlying it changed. And so people have bookmarks are finding when they click on that bookmark to something that they used to go to, that bookmark doesn't work any longer. You gotta go get to the place you were and then put in a new bookmark. So that, that's not a problem on our end, but it is a common theme that we're hearing from people of, it doesn't work any longer. The bookmark doesn't work. And then the county executive, and I, playing with it yesterday, discovered, it's very interesting. I joked with him. He was such an early fan and adopter of artificial intelligence. It's rewired him so that when he puts in something in a search, he does it as a question prompt. How do I? Because that's how you're putting in a prompt. So, interestingly, if you go into the search bar on our website and say, how do I contact the county executive? You wind up with a result that's like, how do I pay my taxes? How do I do something? Whereas if you just type in, as you used to when you're Googling, contact the county executive, it takes you right to his place. And so again, we have so many new tools as a society. You got to think through what you're putting in to the type of service you're using. So if you go to Monty, and we upgraded Monty, our bot, if you go to Monty, you can ask it questions like how you would ask me a question. How do I contact the county executive? You get the right answer. You put it into a search function and it goes the wrong way. So it's often thinking through, wow, we have all these new tools and we got to think a little bit more how to use the tools. So, we're creating so many new pathways for people to get to us that sometimes that can create even more chances to make mistakes.
I was just going to add, and I think Richie maybe alluded this a little more. It's really interesting that our actually technology department has set up a war room to actually in real time respond to identified issues that that are coming through either from county employees reporting or from members of the public reporting. And so obviously we'll be able to get you more data about the corrective actions that have been taken, but they're trying to knock them out in near real time as issues are identified. This is obviously a major transition for the county. We've been operating off this particular platform for a website for decades at this point. I think this conversion, obviously, you're going to make a lot of improvements, but you're going to break a few things, as Rich alluded to. And I think they've really stepped forward to put people, in a space where they're looking to address the problems that we identify very quickly.
Thank you.
Thanks. Any additional questions this afternoon, members of the media?
If you have any, give them to Chaley to ask.
Any more questions? Well, I guess we're done this afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us. Stay safe, and we'll see you next time. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you all.